The forest breathed in rhythm with the night. Shadows stretched long and thin, curling around the gnarled trunks like whispered secrets. High above, the full moon hung low, its silver light spilling over the treetops, scattering delicate beams across the moss-covered ground. A soft wind stirred the leaves, carrying with it a scent both familiar and foreign, a scent that made the hairs along her spine stand at attention. Amara walked carefully along the narrow path, her boots silent against the damp earth. She had always felt drawn to the woods at night, as if something unseen called her name. Tonight that pull was stronger, almost tangible. A tingling warmth traveled up her arms, settling in her chest, where a strange flutter of anticipation began to grow. Distant howls echoed through the trees, not one, but many, layered and harmonious, like a haunting chorus. She paused, heart pounding, instinct warning her to turn back, and yet a magnetic curiosity rooted her to the spot. "Who's out there?" she whispered, her voice trembling, though she barely realized she'd spoken. The wind carried her words into the darkness, and for a heartbeat, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Legends of fated bonds had always seemed like bedtime stories, myths told by elders to entertain children. But tonight, they felt dangerously close to truth. Her pulse quickened as if her very body recognized something she did not yet understand. She was being watched. A movement flickered between the trees, not a shadow, but the impression of a presence, powerful, steady, undeniable. Amara's breath caught. Her instincts screamed both warning and welcome, a confusing mixture of fear and longing that she could not ignore. Memories she didn't remember surfaced like fragments of a dream. Faces she'd never seen, voices whispering in a language she couldn't understand, a warmth and ache of connection she could not place. She shook her head, trying to dismiss the thoughts, but the pull, the undeniable tug of destiny, was relentless. The moonlight intensified, bathing her in silver fire, and she felt an almost electric hum pass through her veins. Every instinct she had whispered the same warning: someone is coming, someone who has been searching for you. Then a low growl, soft but resonant, rolled through the forest. Her heart skipped a beat. Amara knew, in the deepest part of her being, that her life was about to change, and that whatever awaited her in the shadows, it would not allow her to walk away. She took a cautious step forward, the whisper of the wind brushing against her skin like a lover's caress, carrying with it a secret only the night could reveal. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen eyes gleamed, and the night held its breath, waiting. Amara's steps slowed, her senses stretched taut like a finely tuned wire. The forest no longer felt inviting. It felt, alive, aware of her, testing her, yet she could not turn back. Something, someone, was waiting, and she could feel it pressing just beyond the veil of moonlight. Her mind drifted unbidden to fragments of memories she couldn't place. A flash of laughter on a sunlit morning, the scent of roses and rain, a voice calling her name with an intimacy that burned through the years. She shook her head sharply, trying to banish the echoes. Those memories didn't belong to her, or at least they shouldn't have. The truth was unsettling. She had lived as an ordinary girl for as long as she could remember, unaware of her origins, unaware of the power she carried in her veins. Yet tonight, the ordinary world felt like a fragile mask, and the shadows behind her whispered that someone had seen through it long ago. A rustle in the underbrush drew her attention. She froze, eyes narrowing, every nerve alight with alertness. But when nothing emerged, her pulse eased, only slightly. A warning prickled at the edge of her consciousness, urgent and precise. Someone, or something, was tracking her, patient, relentless. "Why me?" she murmured, her voice trembling as if even saying it aloud might summon the answer. She had always felt different, as if a part of her had been kept hidden, even from herself. Now that hidden piece clawed to the surface, aching to be claimed, but she had no guide, no map, no anchor. A sudden breeze carried a strange scent, earthy, metallic, and faintly like smoke. Her stomach twisted. She was not alone. A shadow detached itself from the line of trees, a human shape, tall, imposing, silent. Instinct screamed at her to run, yet a part of her longed to stay, to confront the truth that had haunted her life in fragments and whispers. and then a voice, soft, almost a whisper, yet dripping with authority, cut through the stillness. "You cannot hide anymore." Amara's chest tightened. She wanted to demand who was speaking, wanted to flee, wanted to dissolve into the shadows like she had so many times before. But the words struck deeper than fear. They resonated in a place she did not know existed, a place that had been waiting. Her hands clenched at her sides, questions swirled in her mind, each more dangerous than the last. Was this predator or protector? How long had she been sought, and why? The legends, the whispers of fated mates, suddenly made sense in a way that terrified her. She had been running from shadows she had not known were her own. A cold resolve settled over her. She would not be caught unprepared. Not tonight. Not by whatever force had been watching her, tracing her life like a spider weaving a web of destiny. Yet beneath the fear, a thrill stirred, wild and intoxicating. Perhaps the world she had known was gone forever. Perhaps it had been gone the moment she first felt the moon's pull. And in that knowledge, she felt a tremor of something she could not name, a mixture of dread and anticipation, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what she would do next. Somewhere beyond the trees, eyes glimmered, patience infinite, and Amara understood. Her life was no longer hers to command. The shadows of the past had found her, and they would not release her until she faced what lay within. Amara's breath hitched, her chest tightening as the shadow stepped fully into the silver light, tall, broad, shouldered, and radiating a power that made the forest itself seem to bow. He was nothing like any man she had ever known. Every instinct in her body screamed that he was dangerous, terrifyingly, impossibly so, but a part of her, a part she had never acknowledged, trembled with recognition. His eyes, sharp, amber, predatory, locked onto hers. The air between them seemed to thrum with an unspoken charge, a magnetism she could not resist. Time slowed, her pulse raced, and in that moment she understood what the stories meant when they spoke of fated bonds. A connection that transcended reason, that rooted itself in your very soul. "You've been running," he said, voice low, smooth and commanding, as if every word carried weight far beyond speech. It wasn't a question, it was a statement, and somehow it cut through the uncertainty twisting in her chest. Amara swallowed hard. Words failed her. His presence was suffocating, yet intoxicating, like inhaling a storm. She wanted to flee, to hide in the shadows where she could vanish and breathe again. But she was already seen, already found. His gaze flickered over her, sharp and evaluating, like a predator sizing up its prey. But not with hunger, with recognition, possession, and the unspoken demand, "You are mine, whether you accept it or not." A shiver ran through her. The stories had warned of the Alpha's power, but no tale could prepare her for the raw, palpable force of it, the dominance that radiated from him without effort, the danger that made her tremble from fear and something else, something far more complicated. "You don't know what you are," he said, stepping closer, each movement deliberate, precise. The forest seemed to darken around him, shadows bending toward him as though aware of his command. "But I do, and hiding won't save you." Amara's heart pounded against her ribs like a drum. Part of her wanted to challenge him, to deny what she felt stirring inside her, but her body betrayed her, drawn forward by the magnetic pull she didn't yet understand. Every instinct screamed warning, but every pulse of her blood whispered desire. He stopped a mere breath away, amber eyes burning into hers. His presence filled her senses, power, danger, authority, and something softer, hidden beneath layers she could not yet see. She felt exposed, small, utterly unprotected, yet completely compelled. Then, just as suddenly, he stepped back. A growl rumbled in his throat, low and guttural, a warning to anyone, or anything, that dared cross the boundary he had set. "You cannot run from me," he said, and the words cut deep, echoing like a bell of fate. Amara staggered back, breath shaky. Her pulse roared in her ears. He was gone in a blink, slipping into the shadows like smoke, leaving her trembling and alone. Yet the heat of his gaze lingered on her skin, a silent mark that she could not erase. The forest was quiet again, but she knew the truth. Escape was no longer possible, and somewhere deep inside, a dangerous, thrilling thought took root. She wanted him to find her again. Emera hurried through the streets of the nearby town, her senses on high alert. The moon hung low, its silver light a reminder of the night she had glimpsed the Alpha, his amber gaze branded into her mind like fire. She kept her hood pulled low, her movements deliberately ordinary, yet every shadow, every whisper of wind seemed to hum with unseen eyes. She had spent years perfecting the art of blending in, hiding the instincts and abilities that made her. Different tonight, that careful facade felt fragile, stretched thin by fear and anticipation. Her heart still raced from the encounter in the forest, and every nerve screamed that he was watching, even now. Passing the cafe where she sometimes worked, she forced herself to slow, smiling politely at the few stragglers lingering near the door. Ordinary, simple, invisible, it was all she could manage. Yet, even as she tried to melt into the mundane, small slips betrayed her. A waiter's glance lingered on her a second too long, noticing the subtle tension in her posture. A dog barked at her as she passed, hackles raised in instinctual recognition. She forced a calm breath, smoothing her hands over her coat, reminding herself, no one could know. Not yet. Her thoughts drifted back to the forest, to the Alpha's presence, to the intensity that had left her shaking. Something about him stirred a part of her she had spent years suppressing, something primal, urgent, and undeniably hers. She had no name for it yet, only the knowledge that the pull between them was dangerous and irresistible. Focus. She whispered, stepping into the narrow alley behind the cafe, away from prying eyes. Just keep your head down, keep moving. But the world had other plans. A sudden stumble over a loose cobblestone sent her tumbling, and instinct nearly betrayed her. She caught herself, heart racing, as a shadowy figure appeared at the alley's edge, another watcher. Or merely coincidence, she couldn't tell, and the tension in her chest coiled like a snake. Every moment of her careful concealment was a gamble. Every slip, every instinct she suppressed drew attention. She felt the unseen weight of the Alpha's pack pressing in, curious and wary, the same way predators sized up prey, or perhaps allies. And through it all, the pull of her bond to him whispered insistently, reminding her that hiding could never be enough. She reached her small apartment, slamming the door behind her, and leaned against it, shivering despite the warmth inside. For a moment, she allowed herself to sink into the exhaustion and fear. But deep down, she knew it was futile. She could hide, yes, but only for so long. The night pressed against the windows, alive with possibilities and dangers, and Amara understood. She was playing a game with forces far beyond her control. One misstep, one revealed flicker of power, and the delicate balance of secrecy would shatter. And somewhere in the shadows of the town, she could almost feel him, the Alpha, the one who had found her in the forest, whose gaze had marked her soul. Watching, waiting, her pulse quickened, the game of concealment had begun, and she was losing. Amara had thought the world of humans was safe, a place where she could hide, where her instincts could sleep. She had been wrong. The marketplace bustled in the afternoon sun, the mundane chaos masking the danger that lingered at the edges of perception. Amara moved among the crowd, careful, alert, her hands clutching her basket of groceries as if it were armor. She felt it before she saw him. The shift in the air, the subtle tremor beneath her feet, the way the world seemed to tilt toward him. He appeared at the far end of the street, tall, unyielding, the Alpha's presence impossible to ignore. Amber eyes found hers instantly, and she froze. Time slowed, as it always did when he was near. Every instinct screamed warning, yet her body betrayed her, leaning toward him even as her mind demanded retreat. She turned a corner, thinking she could avoid him, but fate, or perhaps desire, had other plans. A cartwheel wobbled precariously behind her. Without thinking, she leapt forward, catching it just before it crashed into the crowd. The movement was fluid, precise, and entirely unnatural, impressive. The Alpha murmured from behind her, voice low and tinged with something she couldn't name: amusement, approval, desire. She felt heat climb her neck, but didn't dare look. What are you doing here?" she stammered, spinning to face him, heart hammering. His presence loomed close, magnetic, and suffocating, and she could feel the tension coil between them like a living thing. "I could ask you the same. he said, his gaze locking with hers. A subtle smirk curved his lips, but his eyes held a warning, a promise, and something deeper that made her stomach twist. You shouldn't be out here, Luna. The word struck her like a thunderclap. Luna, the secret she had guarded with every ounce of her being, her destiny and her bond, lay bare in his voice. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet, inexplicably, electrified. Her fingers brushed against his as he handed her the cart back. The contact was brief, fleeting, yet it left a fire smoldering through her veins, a pulse of connection she could neither resist nor ignore. Her breath caught, and she realized with a jolt that the bond between them, the one fated, undeniable, was stirring. Already you feel it, don't you? He whispered, leaning closer, so close that her senses reeled. The bond, it's impossible to ignore. She faltered, words failing under the intensity of his gaze. Her instincts screamed to flee, to deny the pull, yet every fiber of her being whispered the same truth. She wanted him, needed him, but the danger, the taboo, the unspoken rules, it should have been forbidden. His hand lingered near hers, a promise of possession and protection. Their faces hovered inches apart, breaths mingling, hearts racing in a rhythm that belonged to them alone. The world around them, the bustling crowd, the sunlight, the mundane chatter, faded into irrelevance. And for the first time, Amara understood the intoxicating, perilous truth of their connection. It was forbidden, yes, but irresistibly, irreversibly theirs. A sharp cry from the marketplace pulled her back, snapping reality around them. The moment broke, the tension lingering like a promise yet fulfilled. Amber eyes held hers, unyielding, warning, and demanding at once. You cannot escape what you are, or me. He said softly, voice low, almost intimate, before he vanished into the crowd, leaving her trembling and aware that the slow burn between them had just begun. The sun had barely dipped below the horizon when Amara arrived at the pack gathering, her nerves taut like bowstrings. The grand hall smelled of burning pine and leather, a mixture that reminded her of wolves, of family, and of the life she had never known, but was inevitably drawn into. The Alpha was there, of course, Sever, watchful, commanding, his presence a magnetic pull she could neither resist nor fully understand. She tried to steady her breathing, to remind herself that the moments in the marketplace were fleeting, just an illusion of connection, a tease of something impossible. Yet every step she took toward the center of the hall, every glance at him, tightened the knot of desire and fear coiled in her chest. His voice cut through the murmur of the pack, low, commanding, yet laced with a cold edge that made her stomach plummet. Amber eyes met hers across the room, and her breath hitched. Something in his gaze was different this time. Not the smoldering pull, not the barely contained desire, but a deliberate, public dismissal that struck her harder than any physical blow. Amara, he said, stepping toward her, every head in the hall turned, every whisper carrying through the room like a knife. You are reckless. Your instincts betray you, and your lack of control endangers everyone. Her cheeks flushed, heat rising in equal parts embarrassment and indignation. She opened her mouth to explain, to protest, but he cut her off with a wave of his hand, sharp and final. Do not pretend you belong here if you cannot abide by the rules. This is not a place for your whims. The pack murmured, some nodding, others watching silently. She felt the sting of their judgment, the weight of eyes she could not escape. Her chest ached, not just from his words, but from the cruel contrast between the Alpha who had touched her in the marketplace, the one who had sparked her very soul, and the cold, unyielding leader standing before her now. I'm trying, she whispered, barely audible, voice trembling, her hands twisted together in front of her, instinctively hiding the trembling that came from more than fear, it came from heartbreak. He glanced at her briefly, the faintest flicker of something raw and untamed crossing his features before it vanished beneath the mask of authority. Trying is not enough, he said, voice steady, unyielding. Not here, not now, perhaps, not ever. Her heart constricted, a sudden, sharp pain slicing through her. The rejection was public, absolute, and it left her exposed. The whispers of the pack became a background hum, irrelevant compared to the ache in her chest. She had felt the bond, felt the pull, but now it seemed as though the very universe had conspired to keep them apart. Fury and despair collided inside her. She wanted to run, to escape, to curse the fates that had allowed desire to bloom only to crush it in the open. Yet even as her pride burned and tears threatened, a small ember of defiance sparked within her. She would not disappear, not entirely. She would endure, learn, and survive this rejection. But deep down, a tremor of certainty remained. The bond could not be denied forever. And as the Alpha turned away, leaving her trembling in the center of the hall, she understood the cruelest truth. The pull between them was only growing stronger, even under the weight of rejection. The night had fallen hard, draping the pack's territory in a blanket of silver and shadow. Amara moved silently through the woods, her heart still aching from the Alpha's public rejection. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the humiliation and the fierce, unspoken longing that refused to fade. She told herself she would retreat, hide, and maintain the fragile illusion of normalcy she had so carefully constructed. But fate had other plans. A rustle in the underbrush froze her in place. Amber eyes, glowing with more than ordinary light, emerged from the darkness, followed by a presence so commanding that it made her chest tighten. The Alpha stepped forward, his form illuminated by the moonlight, every movement precise and predatory. He did not speak at first. Instead, his gaze scanned her, sharp and calculating, as if measuring the very essence of her soul. "You lied to me," he finally said, his voice low, edged with accusation and something deeper that made her pulse spike. "All this time, hiding who you are. Why?" Amara swallowed hard, her instincts flaring. She wanted to explain, to insist that she had only sought safety, not deceit. But before she could form words, a shimmer of light pulsed from her hand, unintended, unrestrained. The air itself seemed to tremble around her. Leaves stirred violently despite the still night. The ground beneath them shifted subtly, a quiet tremor echoing through the forest. The Alpha's eyes widened, not in anger but in recognition. Something ancient stirred in him, something that demanded reverence and awe. "It's true," he whispered, voice trembling with suppressed power. "You are, more than I ever imagined, and this—" He gestured toward the faint glow still radiating from her palm. "This is why you could never stay hidden, why destiny has hunted you all your life." Amara's breath caught. The secret she had buried so deeply, the truth she had denied even to herself, was exposed. She was not just a girl trying to survive. She was the Luna in waiting, the mate of the Alpha, the guardian of a power she barely understood, and the key to a legacy older than the pack itself. I didn't choose this," she whispered, voice quivering. "I just wanted to live, to be ordinary." The Alpha stepped closer, closing the distance between them, his presence overwhelming yet protective. "Ordinary was never your fate," he said softly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "You were meant to stand beside me, meant to claim the strength inside you, and hiding it, hiding yourself, nearly cost you everything." A whirlwind of emotions crashed over her: fear, awe, shame, and an undeniable attraction that made her knees weak. The bond, the one she had tried to ignore, to suppress, to flee from, throbbed like a living heartbeat between them, undeniable, consuming, and dangerous. Amara realized then that there was no turning back. The truth was revealed, raw and blazing, and the Alpha's gaze held both judgment and desire. The air between them crackled, the unspoken promise of connection and the peril of defiance intertwining in a tension she could neither flee nor deny. I'm not ready," she murmured, yet even as she said it, a spark of longing flared within her chest. "Perhaps," he replied, amber eyes darkening with intensity, "but you will be, and I will wait for as long as it takes." The forest held its breath, the night alive with secrets unveiled, and Amara understood the weight of the truth. Destiny was no longer a choice. The pack territory simmered with tension as night fell. Torches flickered against the stone walls of the gathering hall, casting long shadows that danced across faces taut with unease. Whispers carried through the air like sparks, threatening to ignite a blaze. Rumors, suspicions, and rivalries entwined with the scent of pine and anticipation. Amara tread carefully along the periphery, every step measured, every heartbeat echoing in her chest. The weight of the Alpha's gaze followed her, invisible yet undeniable, like gravity pulling her toward him. She could feel the bond stirring beneath her skin, a pulse that matched the rhythm of his, invisible but insistent, and it both terrified and thrilled her. The council of elders convened at the center of the hall, their murmurs a mix of concern and curiosity. "Her power is growing," one elder whispered, voice edged with fear, "if she cannot control it." His words trailed off, the threat implicit and unspoken. Amura's fingers clenched into fists. Every day she lived with the knowledge that her abilities could be her greatest strength, or the source of her destruction. She had trained in secret, hiding her instincts, masking her presence, yet now her very existence was under scrutiny. Every glance, every whisper from the pack reminded her. The world she had known had disappeared, replaced by a life she did not yet understand but could not escape. A sharp voice cut through the tension. "She is dangerous," one of the younger pack members hissed, eyes narrowing at Amara. "If she cannot master herself, the pack will suffer." The Alpha's growl rumbled through the hall, deep and low, a warning that made the murmurs die instantly. He stepped forward, his silhouette dominating the space, amber eyes blazing. "She is not your concern," he said, voice smooth yet edged with steel. "She is under my protection, and any who threaten her will answer to me." Amara's heart skipped, and despite the fire in his words, she could feel the pull between them intensifying. The bond that had ignited in fleeting touches and stolen glances now whispered like a drumbeat in her chest. Urgent, demanding, impossible to ignore. Yet the tension in the hall was far from dissipated. Rival packs were rumored to be watching, dark forces gathering at the borders, and even within, jealousies and old grudges festered like wounds refusing to heal. Every flicker of a shadow, every cough in the corners, reminded her that danger was never far, and that her presence alone could ignite it. The Alpha's hand brushed hers for a fleeting moment as he passed, a touch that should have been accidental, but carried weight, ownership, and promise. Her pulse surged, a mix of fear and longing twisting in her stomach. The message was clear, the slow burn between them was no longer subtle. And as the night deepened, whispers grew louder, eyes lingered longer, and Amara realized the truth. The world around them was teetering on the edge of chaos, and the bond she could no longer deny was a spark that could either save them or set everything ablaze. The forest outside was alive, the pack restless, and Amara's heartbeat raced in unison with the tension rising all around her. Fate was closing in, and there would be no escaping it. Not from the Alpha, not from her powers, and certainly not from the destiny that had claimed her. The night air was thick with unease, carrying the scent of rain and distant pine when the rival first appeared. Amara sensed him before she saw him. The shift in the energy, the subtle tremor in the Alpha's presence, the almost predatory alertness of the pack around her. Danger had a name, and it moved through the shadows with lethal precision. He emerged from the tree line, tall, broad, and exuding a dark charm that sent a shiver down her spine. His amber eyes flicked toward the Alpha with something that was not fear, not respect, but challenge. The air between them crackled as though the world itself recognized the clash about to unfold. "You've been busy, Alpha," the rival said, voice smooth, a dangerous undertone hidden beneath casual words. "And you've brought an interesting little surprise with you." His gaze swept over Amara, lingering longer than it should, and she felt the hair on the back of her neck rise. Amara instinctively stepped closer to the Alpha, her instincts screaming, warning, but also protecting. The bond pulsed sharply in her chest, a reminder that she was tethered to him in a way she could not ignore. She realized with a pang how fiercely he had already staked claim to her, even if he had not yet admitted it outright. The Alpha's growl was low, vibrating in the space between them, a sound that promised consequences. "Step away," he commanded, voice cold, authority absolute. Every pack member froze, aware that the slightest misstep could ignite a war. The rival smirked, undeterred. "Or what? You'll bite me?" Or perhaps the little Luna will show me the danger herself. He took a step closer, a deliberate provocation meant to draw Amara's attention, to test her reaction, and to tempt the Alpha's wrath. Amara's chest tightened. The danger was real, but so was the forbidden thrill that coursed through her. She could feel the Alpha's tension mirrored in her own body, the protective heat, the restrained power, the simmering, undeniable connection. "I am warning you," the Alpha growled, stepping in front of her, shadow and fire blending into a singular, terrifying presence. "You touch her, and you will regret it for the rest of your life." The rival laughed softly, a sound that sent icy fingers crawling along Amara's spine. "We'll see," he said, and then, without another word, he retreated into the trees, leaving the forest alive with a tense, lingering threat. Amara exhaled shakily, heart racing. She looked up at the Alpha, whose gaze softened, not entirely, but just enough for her to see the depth of care and ownership simmering beneath the surface. The bond between them pulsed sharply, unspoken words vibrating in the space around them. Danger, desire, and undeniable claim. "You cannot deny it," he murmured, amber eyes catching hers in the moonlight. "The bond is real, and it is growing stronger. No rival, no threat, no hesitation can change that." She swallowed hard, pulse hammering. The rival had come as a test, one she did not fully understand, one that revealed more than danger. It revealed that the Alpha's claim over her was not just a possibility, it was inevitable. And somewhere deep inside, she knew the slow burn between them had just intensified, ignited by jealousy, threat, and the raw, undeniable pull of fate. The night was thick with mist, curling through the trees like silent fingers reaching for them. Amara's breath came in shallow bursts as she moved through the forest, every sense heightened, every instinct screaming that danger lurked nearby. The rival's threat still lingered in her mind, a shadow of anticipation and fear. But she knew deep in her chest that the Alpha would not let harm touch her. Not tonight, not ever. A rustle behind her made her spin. The rival stepped into the moonlight, eyes glinting with malice, ready to test her courage, ready to provoke the Alpha. But before a single word could pass, a presence thundered through the shadows. Powerful, unstoppable, utterly terrifying. The Alpha emerged, a living force of dominance and protection. Amber eyes blazed like fire, muscles coiled, every motion deliberate, every breath controlled. He stopped mere inches from the rival, and the forest seemed to shrink around them, holding its breath in anticipation. "You've crossed the line," the Alpha growled, low and guttural, a sound that vibrated through the trees and deep into Amara's bones. "One more step, and you'll regret it." The rival smirked, cocky and unafraid, but his confidence faltered under the weight of the Alpha's presence. The ground itself seemed to respond to the power emanating from the leader, and Amara felt the bond between them thrum sharply, a pulse that spoke of claim, protection, and possession. The Alpha's hand shot out, gripping her wrist gently yet firmly, pulling her closer. She felt the heat of him, the sheer intensity of his aura, and a shiver ran through her spine. This was no longer subtle, no longer restrained. The claim was undeniable. "You are mine," he said, voice low, intimate, and final. Every word carried weight, ownership, and promise. Amara's knees nearly buckled under the force of it, her pulse echoing in time with the bond that had never been so alive, so insistent, so powerful. She dared a glance up, meeting his amber eyes, and saw something she hadn't expected. Not anger, not threat, but something softer, warmer, buried beneath the Alpha's command. A fierce protectiveness, an undeniable desire, and a promise that no rival could touch her while he lived. The rival made a step forward, testing the line, and the Alpha's growl rose, deep and resonant. "Step back," he warned, voice like steel wrapped in fire. The warning was enough. The rival retreated, his confidence shattered, leaving the forest heavy with silence. Amara's breath caught as the Alpha turned his attention fully to her. The mist swirled around them, moonlight glinting in his hair, highlighting the curve of his jaw, the strength in his form. His hand lingered on her wrist, and she felt it, not just as a touch, but as a bond, a tether linking their hearts, their fates, their very souls. "You cannot escape what we are," he murmured, brushing a thumb along her cheek, reverent, protective, claiming. No rival, no shadow, no fear can undo this. You are mine, your power, your heart, your soul. All of it belongs with me. Emira's chest heaved, a flood of emotions crashing over her, relief, desire, awe, and a trembling, undeniable certainty. The slow burn of attraction, the tension of weeks, the whispers of fate. They all culminated here in his claim, in the knowledge that she could no longer deny him, nor the bond pulsing between them. The forest was silent, the mist settling around them like a curtain, and Amara understood one truth that no threat could erase. She was his, and he would protect her with every fiber of his being. The forest was alive with menace. Shadows twisted and coiled beneath the pale glow of the moon, and the wind carried a scent of smoke and something sharper, blood. Amara's pulse raced as she ran through the trees, heart hammering not just from fear, but from the lingering thrill of the Alpha's claim. She should have felt safe with him, but instinct warned her that danger lurked closer than ever. A sudden roar shattered the night, and she skidded to a halt. From the shadows, a dark figure lunged, a rival shifter, seeking to test the Alpha's dominance and her own resilience. Before she could react, hands wrapped around her, lifting her off her feet. Hold on. A familiar voice commanded. The Alpha's form blurred around her, powerful and unstoppable, as he intercepted the attack with ferocity that made the air itself tremble. His amber eyes blazed, teeth bared, muscles coiled like a predator about to strike. Every movement was precise, lethal, protective. Amara's heart raced as she realized just how close she had come to death, and yet, even amidst terror, there was a strange exhilaration. Her bond with him pulsed sharply, a tether of life and destiny entwining them. She could feel his heartbeat, hear the cadence of his power resonating through her own veins. The rival faltered under the Alpha's onslaught, snarling, claws flashing, but the Alpha was faster, stronger, a living storm of dominance. You will not touch her, he growled, every word a promise of vengeance. The forest seemed to recoil under his wrath, the shadows themselves bending before him. Amara's instincts flared. She could feel the raw surge of energy in the air, the danger pressing against her senses, and she realized she could fight too, not just alongside him, but with him. She extended her hands, a pulse of her own power erupting in defense, throwing the rival back, stunned and disoriented. The two of them moved as one, Alpha and Luna, predator and partner, an unspoken rhythm forged by instinct, bond, and necessity. The danger drew closer, but together they were unstoppable, a force neither rival nor threat could overcome. Finally, the last adversary fell, retreating into the darkness, leaving the forest trembling in silence. Amara's knees buckled, exhaustion crashing over her, but the Alpha caught her, his strong arms wrapping around her, steadying, grounding. His chest rose and fell against hers, the heat of him enveloping her, a tether she could not, and would not, deny. "You're safe," he whispered, voice low and reverent, amber eyes holding hers. "I've got you, always." Tears pricked her eyes, a mixture of relief, awe, and the fierce surge of emotions she could no longer suppress. The danger had tested them both, her courage, his ferocity, their bond, and the outcome was undeniable. They were stronger together, tied by more than destiny, more than fate. Amara pressed her forehead to his chest, feeling the steady pulse beneath her hands, knowing that the trials of the night had forged something permanent. Trust, desire, connection, a love born in fire and shadow, impossible to sever. The forest exhaled around them, the danger dissipated, but the intensity of what had passed lingered. Amara realized then that nothing, not fear, not rivals, not even the past, could break what had been forged between them. They were bound, unyielding, and unstoppable. The dawn was soft, spilling gold, and rose across the forest canopy, a gentle contrast to the chaos of the night before. Amara stood at the edge of the clearing, her hair catching the light, eyes scanning the horizon. The forest was quiet now, peaceful, but the weight of everything that had happened still lingered in her chest. She thought of the Alpha, the danger he had shielded her from, the moments of fire and desire, the bond that had pulsed between them stronger than anything she had ever known. She had run, hidden, doubted herself, but the truth had been waiting all along, shimmering in every brush of his hand, every glance, every heartbeat that mirrored her own. He appeared behind her without a sound, footsteps as silent as the forest floor. She didn't turn immediately. She felt him first. The warmth, the power, the steady rhythm of his presence anchoring her. "You're thinking too much," he murmured, voice low and intimate, amber eyes catching the morning light, soft yet commanding. "The bond doesn't need thought. It just is, always has been, always will be." Amara finally turned, and for the first time she allowed herself to meet his gaze fully. The bond between them throbbed visibly now, a tether she could feel in her very bones. "No more hiding, no more denial. I don't want to hide any more," she whispered, the words tasting like freedom and courage all at once. "I choose this, choose you." A slow, almost imperceptible smile curved his lips. He stepped closer, and she felt the heat of him, the promise of protection, the undeniable pull of destiny aligning. "Then it is done," he said, voice like velvet and fire combined. "You are mine, Luna, and I am yours, forever." The forest seemed to respond to their declaration. A soft breeze stirred, carrying the scent of pine and earth, rustling leaves like applause, and the first birds of morning broke into song. The danger, the rivals, the shadows of the past, all of it melted away, leaving only this moment, this choice, this undeniable union. Amara let herself be drawn into him, her hands resting on his chest, feeling the steady, fierce beat of his heart. His hands found hers, fingers interlacing, the connection electric and grounding at once. She no longer feared the power she carried, no longer doubted the bond that had defined her for so long. Together they were unstoppable, unbreakable, destined. You really mean it," she whispered, voice trembling with awe and joy. He pressed his forehead to hers, amber eyes glinting with love and promise, every word, every heartbeat. "You are my Luna, my partner, my everything." The sun rose higher, bathing them in warmth, and Amara felt the full weight of choice, of love, of destiny fulfilled. The pack, the forest, the world itself seemed to bow to the union, a quiet, reverent acknowledgement that the fated mate bond had been realized at last. Her chest swelled with relief and happiness, and she let herself smile, really freely, for the first time in years. No more secrets, no more fear, just him, just her, just the unbreakable bond that would carry them through anything. The Alpha tightened his hold, protective and tender, and whispered one last promise that made her shiver with certainty, together, always. And in that moment, Amara knew she had made the choice she was always meant to make. She was his, he was hers, and nothing, not past, not rival, not danger, could ever change that. The forest held its breath, the morning light shimmering on their joined hands, and the world felt right. At last, destiny and desire, power and love, all aligned.